In the wake of Donald Trump's re-election, a storm of political debate has ignited about the future trajectory of American democracy. The resurgence of Trump, marked by a flurry of pardons, executive orders, and controversial national policies, raises urgent questions about the potential erosion of democratic norms in the United States. As various political analysts weigh in on the implications of his second term, the consensus appears to be one of caution and concern. Thomas B. Edsall, in a recent column for the New York Times, draws parallels between Trump and historical figures like Warren G. Harding, suggesting that Trump's appeal lies with a broad base of support drawn from disillusioned voters. Yet Edsall emphasizes that unlike Harding, Trump exhibits a distinct mean streak and a penchant for revenge that has been evident in his political maneuvers as he steps back into the Oval Office. The question remains, where is this man taking America? Political scientists like Pippa Norris from Harvard have pointed to the vulnerabilities within the American political system that Trump is exploiting. Norris highlights the erosion of institutional checks and balances that previously constrained presidential power, particularly with the Republican Party controlling both houses of Congress. This shift, coupled with a demoralized Democratic Party and a right-leaning Supreme Court, presents an environment ripe for what Norris describes as accelerated institutional backsliding. The ramifications of Trump's policies during his second term are already being felt. Desmond King, a political scientist at Oxford, notes with alarm the mass pardoning of January 6 insurrectionists, which could embolden future political violence by creating a precedent of impunity for such actions. The implications for civil rights and anti-discrimination efforts are equally concerning. As the Trump administration begins to dismantle long-standing protections established during previous administrations, Trump's return to power is not without its advantages. Political experts have pointed out that he now possesses a more robust mandate, having won both the popular vote and the Electoral College. This legitimacy allows him to pursue an agenda that aligns closely with the desires of his base: tougher immigration policies, rolling back civil rights advancements, and a renewed focus on fossil fuels over green energy. As Trump continues to assert his executive power, many are left grappling with the reality that opposition to his agenda has been relatively muted. Francis Lee from Princeton University attributes this to Trump's heightened popularity compared to his first term and the perception among many Americans that the political system is broken. This sentiment has led some to view Trump as a strong leader capable of cutting through bureaucratic inefficiencies even among voters who do not particularly like him. In the face of these developments, strategists within the Democratic Party find themselves at a crossroads. James Carville, a prominent Democratic consultant, suggests that the best approach may be to allow Trump to exhaust himself politically. Meanwhile, others like Isabel Sawhill from the Brookings Institution argue that Trump's actions resemble those of a budding dictator rather than a traditional president. The overwhelming consensus among political observers is that the coming years will be crucial for the preservation of democratic norms in America. The potential for Trump to redefine the boundaries of executive power raises existential questions about the future of governance in the United States. As institutions that once provided checks on presidential authority continue to weaken, the risk of sliding into an electoral autocracy becomes more pronounced. As we look to the horizon, the implications of Trump's second term will likely reverberate far beyond the confines of the White House. The current political climate underscores a pressing need for vigilance among American citizens and institutions alike. The outcome of this period in American history may well hinge on the ability of the electorate to respond effectively to the challenges posed by an increasingly autocratic executive branch. The future remains uncertain, but one thing is clear: the actions taken in these coming years will shape the political landscape for generations to come. As democracy faces unprecedented trials, the resilience of American institutions and the engagement of its citizenry will be tested like never before. In a politically charged atmosphere, the actions of President Donald Trump and the Republican Party have sparked intense debate, particularly regarding their focus on transgender rights at the expense of broader issues affecting the American populace. Following a campaign marked by divisive rhetoric, Trump wasted no time in pursuing a controversial agenda aimed at redefining gender recognition within federal policy. This has raised concerns among civil rights advocates and everyday citizens alike, who argue that the administration's priorities reflect a troubling trend of targeting marginalized communities rather than addressing critical economic issues. Shortly after taking office, President Trump signed an executive order titled "Defending Women from Gender Ideology Extremism and Restoring Biological Truth to the Federal Government." This sweeping directive not only restricts the federal government's recognition of gender to the binary classifications of male and female, but also disregards the existence of intersex individuals and those who identify outside the traditional gender binary. The implications of this order are profound, as it changes how gender is documented on essential government ID, including passports, effectively erasing the identities of many Americans. Kevin Jennings, CEO of Lambda Legal, an organization dedicated to LGBTQ+ civil rights, expressed deep concern over the ramifications of the new policy, stating, "They basically want to erase the existence of trans people." He noted a surge in calls to Lambda Legal's help desk following the election, indicating a climate of fear within the transgender community. Jennings further criticized Republican motives, suggesting that the party is more interested in scoring political points than in genuinely representing the interests of constituents. This sentiment is echoed by data from a Gallup poll that ranked transgender rights as the lowest priority among 22 issues surveyed, with economic concerns taking precedence. The executive order has far-reaching consequences, particularly for transgender individuals in the federal prison system. It mandates that transgender women be housed in men's facilities and eliminates federal funding for gender-affirming care for incarcerated individuals. "Let's be blunt, that is setting up people to be raped or killed," Jennings warned, highlighting the potential for increased violence against vulnerable populations. The administration's focus on transgender issues diverts attention from pressing economic challenges such as rising living costs that have left many Americans struggling. The price of eggs, for instance, reached new highs as the country grapples with inflation, yet the government's response has been largely absent. Critics argue that instead of addressing these urgent matters, the Republican Party is fixated on a minority group, using inflammatory rhetoric to galvanize their base while neglecting the needs of the broader population. Moreover, the executive order is indicative of a larger trend within the Republican Party, which has seen a wave of legislative efforts aimed at restricting the rights of transgender individuals. This includes proposed bans on participation in women's sports and a slew of anti-LGBTQ+ bills tracked by the American Civil Liberties Union, which numbered over 500 last year alone. In contrast to the administration's fixation on gender ideology, Trump has promised a golden age of America in speeches to House Republicans, where he emphasizes the need for a meritocracy and plans for economic reform through tax cuts and increased border security. However, the practicality of these promises is called into question, particularly given the narrow majority Republicans hold in the House, making legislative success precarious. As the political landscape continues to evolve, it remains to be seen how the Republican Party will balance its focus on contentious social issues with the economic realities facing many Americans. The implications of Trump's executive order and subsequent policies will likely reverberate throughout the coming months as advocates challenge these measures in court and the public remains vigilant regarding the administration's priorities. The ongoing struggle for transgender rights amidst economic uncertainty highlights a critical juncture in American politics, where the intersection of social justice and economic well-being will shape the future of policy and public discourse. In a significant shift in Michigan's political landscape, U.S. Senator Gary Peters has announced he will not seek re-election for a third term in 2026. His decision follows the retirement of former Senator Debbie Stabenow, marking a crucial moment that could impact the Democratic Party's strategy as they aim to regain control of the Senate. Peters' announcement, made via a YouTube video on January 28, 2025, reveals both a personal and political motivation as he expresses a desire to pass the torch to a new generation of leaders. Reflecting on his time in office, Peters stated, "Our founding fathers envisioned members of Congress as citizens serving their country for a few terms and then returning to private life." I agree. After 3 terms in the House and 2 terms in the Senate, I believe now is time for me to write a few more paragraphs in my current chapter and turn over the reins. This sentiment echoes a growing trend among some lawmakers who prioritize term limits as a means to encourage fresh perspectives in governance. Peters' tenure has been marked by notable challenges for the Democratic Party, particularly following their loss of control in the U.S. Senate in 2024. As chair of the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, Peters witnessed firsthand the uphill battle faced by his party, which now holds a minority status with a 47-53 split against Republicans. The landscape of the 2026 elections is already shaping up to be competitive, particularly as Democrats will have to defend another open Senate seat compounded by the already contentious political environment. Since his election to the Senate in 2014, Peters has built a reputation for advocating issues crucial to Michiganders, including economic development and community safety. I intend to continue my work on issues important to all Michiganders by working to lower costs, make sure everyone has the opportunity to succeed, feel safe in their community, and protect core American democratic values, he stated, underscoring his commitment to serve his constituents during the remaining 2 years of his term. As Peters steps back from the electoral arena, he has no intentions of retiring entirely from public service. With a hint of personal ambition, he remarked, "I look forward to writing many more chapters when my term ends. I do not know what those chapters will be, but I expect one of them will be me finding endless twisting back roads where I can experience the joy of total freedom riding my Harley-Davidson motorcycle on a warm sunny day." This playful imagery suggests a desire for exploration beyond the confines of political office, yet Peters remains focused on his responsibilities until the end of his term. The Republican response to Peters' announcement was swift. Tim Scott, chair of the National Republican Senatorial Committee, wasted no time in framing the news as a victory for the party. "Gary Peters is reading the room. After spending years ignoring illegal immigration and destroying his state's auto industry, Michigan is better off without him," Scott asserted. This statement reflects the strategic positioning Republicans are likely to adopt as they prepare to contest the open seat. In the wake of Peters' announcement, the path ahead looks uncertain for both parties. With Peters' decision to step away from the race, Democrats will need to identify a strong candidate to fill the void, while Republicans will aim to capitalize on this opportunity to strengthen their foothold in Michigan. As the political climate evolves, the focus will undoubtedly shift to the candidates who emerge to vie for the Senate seat, setting the stage for a highly competitive election cycle in 2026. The implications of these developments will likely resonate far beyond Michigan, influencing national political dynamics in the years to come. In a political landscape where legislative bottlenecks and intra-party strife often dominate the news, the House Rules Committee stands out as a crucial player in shaping Congress's legislative agenda. Dubbed the traffic cop of Congress, this committee wields significant power over which bills make it to the House floor, dictating not just the timing but also the very rules governing debate and amendments. However, as the 119th Congress unfolds, questions surrounding its functionality and the role of party factions within it have come to the forefront. The 118th Congress witnessed a notable shift in dynamics, particularly within the Rules Committee, which comprised 13 members, 9 from the majority party and 4 from the minority. The inclusion of 3 members from the GOP's Freedom Caucus, secured during Kevin McCarthy's contentious negotiations for the speakership, has transformed the committee into a formidable roadblock for legislation, often aligning with Democratic opposition to thwart bills that lack broad support. This has led to significant challenges in passing key legislation, including funds for international aid to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan, which only succeeded through an unprecedented bipartisan collaboration. Yet, history reveals that congressional deadlocks are not new. Past periods of internal conflict within Congress have often resulted in innovative procedural solutions. For instance, during the early 20th century, tensions between establishment Republicans and insurgent factions prompted the creation of the Calendar Wednesday rule, allowing committees to bring bills directly to the floor without Rules Committee approval. Similarly, the 21-day rule established in 1949 enabled committees to bypass the Rules Committee entirely if no action was taken within a specified timeframe. In today's context, Speaker Mike Johnson has employed the suspension of rules, a mechanism typically reserved for uncontroversial bills, to circumvent committee obstruction. While this approach has succeeded in passing significant legislation such as the National Defense Authorization Act, it has faced criticism for limiting debate and excluding potential amendments, raising concerns about the depth of legislative scrutiny. Moreover, the use of discharge petitions, long considered a rarity, has seen a resurgence, with bipartisan efforts successfully pushing bills to the floor that might otherwise languish in committee. This tactic, reminiscent of historical efforts to overcome committee blockages, reflects a growing recognition among lawmakers that collaboration across party lines is essential for legislative progress. Despite these attempts to restore functionality, the current political climate remains fraught with challenges. The Freedom Caucus's influence on the Rules Committee continues to pose obstacles, and the need for bipartisan cooperation has never been more critical. As Speaker Johnson navigates this landscape, he must forge new strategic alliances that transcend mere partisan lines to secure passage for vital legislation. As the 119th Congress progresses, the evolving landscape of the House underscores a broader lesson: effective governance requires not just procedural mechanisms but also the political will to engage in meaningful collaboration. The question now looms large: will legislators rise above factional disputes to embrace the spirit of bipartisanship necessary for addressing the pressing issues facing the nation? Only time will tell if history's lessons will inspire current lawmakers to act decisively in the interest of governance. The Supreme Court of the United States is poised to address a pivotal issue that could reshape the landscape of public education and religious freedom in America. On January 28, 2025, the court announced it would hear two critical cases that challenged the long-standing separation of church and state in the context of public schooling. These cases, Oklahoma Statewide Charter School Board v. Drummond and St. Isidore of Seville Catholic Virtual School v. Drummond, raised the question of whether state governments can be compelled to fund religious charter schools, a move that many believe could drastically alter the American public education system. At the heart of the controversy lies a proposed charter school in Oklahoma, St. Isidore, which is backed by two Catholic dioceses. The Oklahoma Supreme Court previously ruled that funding such a religious institution with public money contravenes both federal constitutional principles and the Oklahoma Constitution's prohibition on using public funds for religious purposes. The court emphasized that public money should not benefit any sect, church, or denomination, reflecting a commitment to maintaining a clear boundary between church and state. However, the Supreme Court under the conservative majority has shown a willingness to expand funding for religious education in recent years. In the landmark 2022 case Carson v. Macon, the court ruled that states must not discriminate against religious schools in contexts where they provide funding for private education. Legal experts anticipate that the justices may extend this reasoning to require states to fund religious charter schools which, unlike private institutions, operate under significant state oversight. As the Oklahoma Supreme Court articulated, charter schools must comply with the same educational standards and regulations as traditional public schools. If the Supreme Court sides with the proponents of St. Isidore, it could set a precedent that allows religious public schools to proliferate across the country. This scenario would leave states with the dilemma of either shutting down existing charter schools or allowing religious institutions to operate within the public school system. Given the public sentiment surrounding education, it is unlikely that states with existing charter schools would choose to close them, potentially leading to a wave of religious charter schools across the nation. The implications of this judicial shift are profound. Historically, the separation of church and state has been a cornerstone of American democracy, designed to protect the pluralistic nature of society. As legal scholar Ian Millhiser notes, past Supreme Court rulings have underscored the importance of ensuring that government does not promote or endorse a particular religion. However, the current court appears to be moving in a direction that would favor religious institutions, challenging the established norms that have governed the relationship between religion and public education for decades. Critics warned that the establishment of public religious schools could lead to significant disparities in educational quality and accessibility. For instance, if a religious charter school becomes the dominant educational institution within it, community families from minority faiths or those with no religious affiliation may find themselves at a disadvantage. Such an outcome could perpetuate inequalities and undermine the foundational principle that all children, regardless of their background, should have access to a quality education. As the nation watches closely, the outcome of these cases will not only dictate the future of public education funding but will also signal the court's stance on religious freedom and the role of government in education, with the potential for far-reaching consequences. The decisions rendered in the coming months could redefine the boundaries of religious expression within American public institutions. In the wake of these developments, the Supreme Court is expected to hear arguments on these cases later this year, setting the stage for a historic confrontation over the fundamental principles of church and state in the United States. As the justices deliberate, the implications of their rulings will resonate across communities and could catalyze further legal battles over the role of religion in public life, education, and beyond. The nation stands at a crossroads where the future of public education and the separation of church and state hangs in the balance.